Today we explore an idea, a profound one. It's an idea that challenges the very foundation of what we think of as history. It suggests that our recorded past isn't the beginning of the story at all.
We're starting with this because it really forces us to question the very nature of beginnings. It suggests that the official story, the one we all learn, might be, well, incomplete. That the sudden appearance of civilization wasn't a start, but a restart, a re-beginning. So consider this. What if our history isn't a straight line, moving ever forward, but something more like a circle?
So let's talk about that comfortable story. It's the standard narrative, the one we're all taught from childhood. For thousands and thousands of years, humanity existed as these scattered bands of hunter-gatherers, right? Living in what we just assume was a simple harmony with nature. And then, boom, an explosion. Almost overnight, you have agriculture, architecture, complex societies, all of it appearing seemingly out of nowhere. But what if that comfortable story leaves out the most dramatic chapter? A chapter of incredible loss and a very, very difficult rebirth.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't speculation. This isn't myth-making. This is geology. We know that at the end of the last ice age, some kind of cataclysmic event triggered a global transformation on a scale that's almost impossible for us to even comprehend. A series of events that literally reshaped continents and changed the course of human history forever.
The sources we're looking at here refer to this event as the Great Reset. And it's important to understand what they mean by that. This wasn't some gradual shift in climate over centuries, no. This was a sudden, catastrophic event. An event that essentially wiped the slate of the world clean, and in doing so, set the course for the world that we all inhabit today. Okay, so let's anchor ourselves in time for a moment. We're talking about a period called the Younger Dryas. It was a geologically brief period of really abrupt, and I mean extreme, climate change that kicked off around 12,900 years ago. Now, what's so critical to understand here is the sheer speed of this change. The geological record, it shows that the massive continental ice sheets melted with a violence and a quickness that just defy conventional models. And that, in turn, triggered this cascade of catastrophic effects all across the globe.
Just try to imagine this. Think about the world's coastlines as they are now. Okay, now imagine the oceans rising by hundreds of feet. We're talking over 300 feet. That's like a 30-story building of water, just submerging the world's shores in what was, geologically speaking, a very short amount of time. This wasn't some gentle tide coming in. No, this was a global inundation. And all those fertile coastal plains, exactly where human populations would have naturally gathered, they were just swallowed by the sea.
It's really hard to grasp the sheer scale of this. We are not just talking about losing some beaches. We're talking about the loss of entire land masses, some the size of continents, whole ecosystems, and any civilizations that might have existed on them. An entire world just erased from the map.
Now you have to think, a physical cataclysm of this magnitude, it would have to be the single most traumatic event in the memory of our entire species. So the question is, where's the record of it? Where's the proof? Well, the argument this research presents is that the record has actually been with us all along. It's just been hidden in plain sight, encoded in our oldest and most sacred stories.
And this is a really crucial point. The few people who survived this, they wouldn't have had written language as we know it. But they had something else. They had oral tradition. They had myth. They had stories. Stories that were passed down through countless generations, preserving a broken, fragmented memory of the world before the disaster. Stories of a kind of golden age, followed by a terrible cataclysm, and always a handful of survivors who carried the seeds of knowledge into a new, broken world.
And when you look at these stories, you start to see these common themes pop up again and again. Think about it, from the Epic of Gilgamesh in ancient Mesopotamia all the way to the flood myths of the Hopi in the Americas. These are cultures with no known contact, and yet they tell these eerily similar stories. Stories about fire falling from the sky, about the sun just vanishing at noon, and the most universal one of all, a world-drowning flood that wiped out almost all of life. So you have to ask yourself, can that really be just a coincidence? Or are we looking at a shared global memory?
And that's the question that really reframes everything. It asks us to look at these ancient tales in a completely new light, not as some kind of primitive fiction, but as the fragmented, traumatized testimony of the survivors of a real, genuine global cataclysm. Okay, so if a world really did exist before this reset, did anything survive besides the stories? This opens up a whole new line of inquiry,
And this is where we find evidence that is, well, it's truly compelling. Anomalies, things that conventional history really struggles to explain.
You see, accepted history, it tells a story of slow, linear progress, right? Humanity learned to farm, and then over time, we learned to build cities, and then we learned to study the stars, one slow, painful step after another. But the archaeological record, well, in certain places, it shows something very different. It shows sophisticated knowledge just appearing, suddenly, fully formed, with no apparent developmental stages leading up to it.
Let's look at some specific examples, these fragments of a forgotten past. We find these enormous stone structures on the ocean floor, like the formations off the coast of Yanaguni-jima in Japan. And geologists date them to a time when that land was actually above water. We're talking more than 10,000 years ago. Then you have these ancient maps, like the Piri Reis map, which seems to accurately show the coastline of an Antarctica without its ice cap, a condition that hasn't existed for thousands and thousands of years. And on top of all that, you see this sudden explosion of advanced astronomy and mathematics in cultures like ancient Egypt and Sumeria, with absolutely no record of how they developed such complex knowledge.
So how do we connect all these different points? You've got the hard geological evidence of a cataclysm, you've got these global myths of destruction, and you've got this anomalous appearance of advanced knowledge. Well, the research we're examining proposes a single, really powerful hypothesis, one that ties all of these threads together.
The central idea here is something called inheritance. Now, this theory isn't about extraterrestrial visitors or anything like that. It's much more grounded. It's the idea that the first great civilizations we know about, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, were actually the heirs to a forgotten, far older human civilization. They weren't inventing complex astronomy from scratch. No, they were rediscovering it, rebuilding from the broken fragments of knowledge that managed to survive the cataclysm.
So this is how that proposed cycle of loss and resumption might have worked. Step 1. An advanced human civilization exists sometime before the Great Reset. Step 2. Catastrophe strikes, a global one, leaving only fragments of its people and its knowledge. Step 3. The survivors, they encode what they remember into myths, into stories, into warnings for the generations to come. And then finally, step 4, thousands of years later, humanity doesn't begin civilization, it resumes it by slowly and painstakingly piecing together that forgotten legacy.
And that idea, that is the absolute core of this hypothesis. It's a really powerful and perspective-altering conclusion. It suggests that the last 12,000 years haven't been this story of linear invention from nothing, but instead a story of painstaking recovery, a long, slow process of us just remembering who we once were and what we once knew.
And so, that leaves us with a final, lingering thought. If any of this hypothesis holds true, it really does change everything we think we know about our past, about our potential, and about our place in the grand cosmic timeline. The question is, are there still fragments of that lost knowledge waiting to be rediscovered, buried in our myths, hidden in our ancient monuments, and perhaps, maybe, even buried deep within ourselves?